Hello, my name's Ian Travers. I'm the founder and now CEO of the Thinking It Better group. We operate in the UK, in the USA, and now in Asia, based in Singapore. And our passion is about helping people change the way they think about stuff and unlock that hidden potential that they may have in their teams.
Thanks, Ian. Kenny?
Sure. My name's Penny Burnham. I am the Vice President of Sales and Marketing for Nycote Laboratories Corporation. We are based out of Los Angeles, California, and we've been here since 1971 in this location. We are a small manufacturer of liquid nylon coatings.
Perfect, thank you. Well, why don't we introduce a couple other folks on the call here before we go along. Mel, you want to give us a brief intro?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Mel Greaves. I work with Ian in Thinking It Better, and I run the UK part of our operation as a leader of approximately 6 or 7 people I think we have now in the UK, and I'm also an accredited coach.
Awesome, thanks, Mel. Mr. Andrew.
All right, my name is Andrew Larson. I am the Business Development, Technical Sales, and Communications Officer for Nycote Laboratories. And Penny hired me just before this pandemic hit the world. So we luckily had this connection through my previous role with a industry association. We had met Thinking It Better, and now we're collaborating.
That's great stuff. So I guess maybe introduction to me, Jason Edwards. I'm in the U.S. Helping support Thinking It Better here and grow the organization. And obviously, the discussion today is, as Andrew, as you mentioned, there is around this COVID craziness, right? The world got set on fire a month and a half ago, and how do we figure out how we go forward and what do we do? And this thinking of the terms going around a lot, right? This new normal, this what is that? Where do we go? What do we do? How do we make decisions? So I think maybe a discussion today of that piece and how do we move forward would be in order. So I guess maybe my first question would be, in your opinions or ideas, what does that mean? This, call it what you will, new normal. We're trying to survive and get to what is next. What is that?
Can I maybe?
I'll jump right in right off the bat and kind of play to what I think Ian's about to say. Is in some discussions before this recording, I really liked that we talked about a survive or thrive mentality, right? Like we've all been equalized. We've all been hit with the same thing globally, and like you said, the world's on fire. So what a lot of us are trying to do is figure out the difference between surviving and then thriving, and not just a new normal, but a better normal. And Ian, I think that's where you were about to go. So I want to kind of get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's one of those things. The more I hear it mentioned in the press and the media, this the return to normality, I get excited by that because we need to be learning stuff from this. We need to be striving for that. What's the better normal? Can we all be, can we learn and take a positive from all the stuff that has been going on and strive for a better normal, not just a return to normal?
It's a good example of that, actually. Ian. One of the things that I notice about this environment right now is that there's been an outbreak of philanthropy and being nice to each other and taking care of each other. And I love that. I love that community spirit and the reaching out and genuine concern for each other. And I'm really hoping that continues long into the future.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah, I would agree. No, it's interesting. My next door neighbor, right? In the last 3 years, I've probably seen him twice, and in the last month, I've probably seen him 12 times because they're always out front and they're out, and this interaction of folks has, in a sense, that has changed. So I think, interesting discussion there. So obviously there's a lot of facets here that I think that this has impacted. I think a good place to start maybe is with kind of work related items. How do we deal with the impact on how we do work, where, not only how we do, but where we do, and So maybe Penny, given your role in the organization, have a little bit of chat around maybe what Nycote is doing in dealing with this basically paradigm shift in what the workplace is.
Yeah, absolutely. At first, it was very much a fear of the what ifs and trying to mitigate that. We put together a mitigation plan really quickly for Nycote here, making sure that we had enough, the basics, the raw materials to make what we make and to continue business in some way when we weren't sure how that was going to go. So the first things that we did were to make sure we have all of the things that we need to have to make our products, and then set up everybody to work from home, and helping everyone adjust to all the challenges of working from home and staying connected to each other and feeling like we were still that cohesive group that we've been for many years, but now separate in separate workspaces, not even coming into the building, and then trying to also help our employees mitigate their fears. So there was a lot of adjustment going on. And, for me personally, my adjustment around being at home with 2 adults and 4 teenagers all working from home and fighting for bandwidth and, learning how to adjust to each other while you're actually having a Zoom call, or just there's so many things that we were all juggling, work and personal. So it took a lot of work. It took a lot of preparedness. It took a lot of innovation to make that happen as smoothly as we possibly could.
Right. So I think one of the things that, we gets thrown around a lot is habits, right? New habits. And Andrew, it's interesting how, one thing Penny mentioned is this kind of change to routine, right? We're not driving in, you're not on a commute anymore to work. And what are your thoughts on kind of how people are dealing with those and how that affects, your productivity and all those type of things?
Well, to the point that Mel brought up, as we're seeing a lot of philanthropy coming out of this, I think that to answer your question, what we're seeing is everybody's dealing with the same thing. We're all dealing with uncertainty, right? And I think that it's forcing all of us to have a little bit more grace and be a little bit more flexible, right? We're learning how to deal in the now. We're still having a positive outlook of the future, but it's forced us to emphasize what's happening right now, because we all know that future is going to change. It's been changing for the past month and a half. It seems like every 2-3 days we get a new report, on when this is going to be over or when businesses are going to open back up. Different states are doing different things. So everybody is kind of on this even playing field of uncertainty. And it's forcing us into a kind of a now mindset. And I see Ian nodding his head, and I think he has something to add to that.
Yeah, I really think there's something here. I mean, Penny, you mentioned this in a conversation we were having earlier as well about habits. And if you think about our daily lives before this major disruptor, we did the same thing every day. We got in the car, you kind of forgot the last 2 miles because you got there automatically. You have a coffee at this time, everything. We have routines, and we're creatures of habit, I think was the terminology, Penny, you were saying. And there's real comfort in that. If you reflect, that whilst we all say, we love to try new things, we do, but within a boundary, within a band, we want that security blanket first. And I think one of the things that I know we've tried as a family to do, and I know, talking with others as well, is to create this new bit of comfort. So this is what we do at this time, and this is what we do at this time, and this is what we do at this time. And there's something about this separation on compartmentalizing, because it's so easy, isn't it, to, hey, I'm at home. I've now got nothing stopping me, so why can't I just keep working? And you go and you go and you go. So being really strict with your time and creating simple routines for you, if you have kids at home, or if you've got significant others at home, if you're not the only one in the house, is And not forgetting you, giving yourself some of that time to look after you. Give yourself that kind of pit stop of relief to spin your internal emotional engine back up again, so that you're still the best version of you as well. So yeah, new habits, new routines.
One thing I noticed about that, Ian, just thinking about getting into habits and stuff. For the last 7 weeks, I haven't want to watch.
Well, yeah.
I don't pay attention to what time it is. I pick it up from the laptop or whatever, and I attend meetings on time. But am I looking at the clock all the time and rushing around on a schedule? No. And it is.
Well, I think to add to something that Ian said, and I'm curious to get your take on this, Penny. I think you and I were both on this call, but I was on a Zoom call. And somebody mentioned that they were surprised by the response to the shift to working from home. Their company was fearful that people working from home would be less productive, and what they found was that people were actually more productive. And I'm wondering how much, Ian, you think that plays into people's inability to stop working. And I'll give an example of I've worked remotely for several years now. What I did not expect and didn't really realize is that every day, somewhere between 5 and 6, I would get up and I would physically leave my house. There would be something that I would go and do almost every day during the week. And due to the social distancing, I no longer do that. I can't go meet a friend at a restaurant for dinner or something of that nature. So that separation between work and home no longer exists, and it is easy to just keep working into the later hours of the evening. And I'm wondering if maybe that's where they're seeing the increase in productivity, because people are just not stopping working.
Yeah, I guess I've got two thoughts on that. I think one, I think you're right. Is there's if you're someone who enjoys what you do, then those cues to take a break have gone. So you can just work on. There's also the thing, if you were spending an hour commute each way, you've just won 10 hours a week back.
Yeah,
that's an extra working day in a week. So I think that part of it, there's definitely a benefit to come from there. But then let's just think about those people who maybe weren't as happy as they could have been at work, and let's just across industry, we kind of ebb and flow, different ways of organising ourselves at work, and we go from we go to open plan offices and clean desk policies and everyone having the same work environment. Maybe that isn't as efficient, because what we've now got is you're suddenly in your own environment. So we've already now ticked. We were talking about Maslow's hierarchy earlier on today. And maybe what we've done is we've given people the opportunity to get more comfortable in their own workspace. So maybe there's some of that about it as well. So against the sea of anxiety and worry, maybe the thing that's balancing against that is I'm at home, I'm not traveling, I feel safe, and maybe part of that, there's a productivity bonus that's coming out of that as well. So maybe there's two of those at play.
Yeah, so maybe we can switch gears here a little bit. We had, there's obviously a lot to be said about routines and habits and how do we adapt to the change and stuff. But one of the things that is really that I think about a lot is how do we, at all levels of the organization, how do we communicate these things to there's just so much information out there, right? I mean, the folks that work with us and work for us all day, every day. I mean, you turn on the news and the big thing you see on the news is this graphic that says coronavirus pandemic, right? I mean, you see that just over and over, and you're constantly reinforced with that. So and there, as this group, we've talked before, right, about some of I have challenges with some of the terms that we've used. Penny, what are your thoughts? How do you communicate with your team and to get them to, to help them transition to this kind of new world order?
Yeah, well, luckily, our president is very communicative. I can't say the word communicative. So she's communicating with us all the time, sorry. She's communicating with us in a way that is bringing everyone together, and she's constantly looking for new tools. So last week we introduced Slack to the team. And whenever you introduce a new technology, there's some pushback. People don't want to change into new habits. They want to stay with their comfortable old habits. And email was fine, and texting was fine. Why are we doing this? So it's bringing everyone along and understanding, like, have an open mind, try new things, see what works for your team. So Slack is actually really great because it interfaces right into our CRM. And everyone, what I'm noticing about it is everyone's allowed to be included in certain conversations so that we all know, even though we're separate, where we're coming from, what we're facing. We've also implemented 2 meetings. One is a management meeting on Monday mornings, and one is a whole team meeting, an all hands meeting on Wednesday morning. This is helping us all reconnect to the goals of the company and to our personal goals within the company. So we've also implemented an entrepreneurial operating system, EOS, which is allowing us to work more efficiently and see where the bottlenecks are in our organization. So taking on new tools, new ways of doing business, especially communication tools, is imperative right now. We have to come together as a group to get things done, but we're separate. So what are the tools that brings us all together?
All right. Yeah.
So
That's
sorry. Yeah, sorry. I think to maybe discuss. Obviously, we talked about this new normal. Everybody hears this new normal, and in the words that we use, right? What do we? Obviously, that creates quite a bit of fear and anxiety within folks. We're seeing that a lot. I'd be curious to see kind of what we think about that piece, right? How people are dealing with that. How important is it? Maybe Mel, give some thoughts to the words that we use, right? How do we deal with that?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting actually, because whenever there's any kind of change for any of us, we are predisposed to react to it anyway. We're creatures that don't like difference. We like things to be the way they are. That's how we got here. It's how we survived and evolved, by not leaping out of the cave. And so we're hesitant. We worry about these things. And inevitably, whenever you launch something new, and I was just reflecting while Penny was talking about deploying Slack into the organization. But whatever we do that's different for the organization, and however well-meaning it is, there's always a distribution, there's a bell curve of people, and there'll be some people who just go, yep, this is fantastic, I'm into it, this is brilliant. There'll be a whole bunch in the middle who are kind of, well, okay, let's just go along with it, that's fine. But there'll be a little tail at the end of the population who are deeply worried about this, don't like it, they're frightened of it, they don't agree with it, whatever. And it's how we take care of those people. It's not wrong. It's just that these people just need a little bit of extra loving care to get them across the line. And so how do we look across that whole spectrum and say, well, there are some people who just get it anyway, that's all fine. Whole bunch will respond to argument and persuasion and a really sound business case, that's fine. But what about the people who are quiet and in the corner and aren't saying much? Are we taking care of those people? Because that's going to be key, I think, because people will notice if we don't take care of those people, others will notice, and the organization, the engagement levels, the motivation of the organization will go down as a result. So we have to take care of everybody across the spectrum.
I think there's a piece on this, and I know from previous conversations, Andrew and Penny, with you on this, this is something which, this looking after people, it's crucial, and I think this is the time where, if you're a leader in business or in groups or in a family unit or whatever, this is the time to step up and or switch on your your sixth sense, and put your arms around your organization. And as you know, Mel, you make a great point. It's, so we set up a Zoom call, we set up a WhatsApp group, we use these tools. Well, who's not been contributing? Who's been quiet? Maybe they need a quick phone call. Maybe they need a quick WhatsApp. Hey, have you got 5 minutes? And I think it's how we get creative in recognizing those people and helping them through.
Yeah, this will come out as well in organizational design for companies who've got it right, where there is no more than something like 12 people per leader. You've got the bandwidth as a leader to be able to reach out and take care of everybody's needs. But if you're an organization that is, it's going to be a problem. It's going to be a struggle, because you just don't have the bandwidth to be able to care in the way that we really should care as leaders.
Yeah, I think, Mel, there was something that you said earlier that that kind of struck a chord with me about, you kind of got your early adopters of change, and then you have your more resistant folks. And I think that dynamic exists regardless the size of your company. And I think Penny, you may or may not agree with this, but probably would agree with it, that even in a small company like ours, there's some folks that are like, no, I like my habit, right? Like I like my routine. And it's much easier for us, and big shout out to Marcy Simpson, our president, I think she's done a fantastic job of engaging one-on-one with each of us, which, in a smaller organization is a little easier to do. And she has a huge focus, and Penny, you as well have a huge focus on kind of that, what we call the right seat fit. So we're able to mitigate it a little easier. But one of the things that we had talked about, and Jason, I really liked something that you had said about that, was in larger organizations that don't have that ability to communicate as effectively, and maybe have made different decisions. We're lucky in the sense that we haven't had to lay anyone off, right? But in larger organizations, some people went straight to furloughs. And kind of the psychological dynamic that exists there, and even in the terminology of essential versus non-essential employees, you see a lot of communication around that. I've seen jokes on the internet of people that have, taken the word essential and crossed it out and replaced it with expendable. All that really means is we're expendable. You have folks that are non-essential who are going to either have to look for new jobs, or when they get hired back into their job, now they have this mindset. They've been told they're non-essential. So what is their buy-in going to be when they come back to work in whatever this new normal is? And what responsibility do we, the businesses, have to engage them and communicate their importance, and battle that misnomer of non-essential that's been put out there?
I really wish we would have used different terminology to begin with, because there are certain things that you have to do to ensure the company's survival, right? So if you're a large company and you had to do things to ensure survival, meaning furlough, there should have been messaging behind that. That is, if this isn't for us, non-essential. For us, this is, we have to make sure the company survives first so we can bring you all back. And I think that's where we kind of missed the mark in society, in business. And I think we could have done better. A lot of companies could have done better. And I think this terminology came from the top level of government, saying that only essential personnel would be working, and they put that value there. So going forward, I think you can still fix this in a bigger company. In a smaller company, it's easy. You just talk to everyone, you use Slack, you get everyone involved, you make sure they know they're important, and maybe you didn't have to lay anybody off. But if you did, now the messaging and bringing them back is where you can win them back and make sure that they understand that this was just for the survival of the company, so there was a company to come back to. And we only kept who we absolutely needed to keep business running, and that was it. Mm-hmm. And if that's what you're going to say, if that's what you did, then that's what you say, and you be honest and truthful, but you make people feel good about the fact that we did that so we could bring you back, because you are important.
So I think we've discussed a lot here, right, around workplace and kind of this information overload piece, and we've been somewhat abstract. Maybe I'll bring it a little home here. Ask each of you a personal question. How much time do you spend thinking about, ooh, what does the future look like? Not only thinking about it, but even as you think about it, what do you feel is your, I mean, because you have people that you deal with every day, and we have to internalize this, and we have self-talk and stuff that we say to ourselves day in, day out. So what are you thinking about what's going to happen? Not only that, but how do you feel you can influence that? And that, I'd be curious your thoughts on that. Ready to go.
Okay. So should I jump in? So you ask how much time do I spend thinking about the future? Well, let's first of all establish that from I'm not worrying about the future. So let's, I certainly have, I'm not, because that doesn't help. And I'm looking after the now, certainly. But how much time do I spend thinking about what the post-COVID-19 era looks like? Loads of time. And it's not just, idle thoughts. I'm listening, and I'm reading, and I'm thinking, and I'm discussing, and I'm trying to all the time think, what's the good stuff that's coming out of this? This is a really, really challenging thing happening across the world, and it would be very easy. We've been talking about sort of data to listen to all the bad stuff, but I constantly try to say, but that was great. I don't want to lose that. So I would say a large proportion of my time I spend thinking about how do we make the title of this, the better normal. I don't know if I could put a percentage on it, but a large proportion of my time, and I mean, some of you will be aware of this, when we talk with the team, I spend quite a lot of time talking about what I think the future is going to look and feel like as well. So a large proportion of my time.
Yeah, and what influence do you think you have over, do you think it in control of what that looks like?
I think I have absolutely no control over what happens in the future, but I have absolute control in how I choose to react. And that's the piece for me. I don't know how many cars, how many airplanes are going to be bought. I don't know how long we're going to take to come out of this thing. I don't know when there's going to be a vaccine, but I can sure as hell spend all the time to work on how I'm going to be feeling and what I'm going to be thinking about. And that's the bit for me. Because as soon as you start to worry about, well, is it going to be over by September? It's a waste of effort. It's a waste, let's make sure we're ready for whatever comes our way. And let's be excited about the other side of this, because I can control all that, because that's about the self-talk, what we say to ourselves, what we say to our team. Right. But yeah, we can't control what's coming towards us.
Well, I think I just want to tie that, Ian, back in with something that we talked about earlier, that we're all on that playing field, right? Like that kind of ties back into that. Like and I think that, and we'll talk a little bit about this, I think in a bit, future talking point, but that you're absolutely right. And it comes down to your mindset, right? Like, do you have an anxiety mindset, like a fear of the what ifs, versus an excitement mindset? I think we're all wired different, so we have different predispositions in that sense. But Penny, I think you can talk to this too. I think we're operating almost more from an excitement opportunity mindset, of where can we go, right? Like being in that now space of like, what opportunities do we have right now? We can only control what we can control, and we don't know what we don't know. You can't know what you don't know.
I mean, truthfully, so I don't know. I don't have like one mindset. I think that we're human. We try to control that beast getting out of the box, where it's like, oh, I could go spin down that road, but where's that going to leave me? But I still do it.
That's a great point.
I still do it all the time. I still catch myself thinking about like, oh, how bad could this really get? What does this really mean for me? And I think everyone has anxiety around that. You can try to be mindful and you can try to be positive all you want, and at the end of the day, if you count the number of times you've actually worried about something, that it's probably a lot. For me, I worry about stuff all the time, but I'm countering that with the things I can control. Like, what can I do personally, financially? What can I cut out just in case in 6 months down the road it gets really bad or it doesn't look so great, so rosy as I'm hoping it will. And then in business, how can I take my fears and turn them into opportunities? You know there's going to be opportunities from this. To be a lot of business that doesn't know where to go because the person they went to for that supply or for that product is no longer there. Yeah. So these are opportunities for us to look for new areas in business, in our personal development, to transition into this new normal and make it come out to be something that we want it to be. We can design it if we're prepared. And, but I'm not by any chance kidding myself that I don't sit here and start spiraling down sometimes. You just do. It's the human condition. That's what we do.
That's a great point.
Sorry, Andrew.
Oh, I was just going to say that's a great point. I think that Penny actually really hit on a question that Jason asked. That's our ability to influence, and being realistic. I like that, Penny, you brought that up. Like, yeah, we're all human. Like, we're going to go a little bit towards that anxiety sometimes, but how do you use those fears as fuel for going and discovering new opportunities, right? And that's our ability to influence.
I mean, you mentioned something, Penny, that really resonated with me as well, because I think this isn't about being just blindly optimistic about the future. That's not what this is about. It's about looking for opportunity, but I think we've got to be kind to ourselves. This is hard. This is different. And, it's okay. It's okay to have a bad day. It's okay to worry. We are normal people. But what I think our role is as leaders is to, for ourselves as well, is to help us through that. So when we do worry about something, that process that we used to get from that worry state into the but what can we do state is how do we replicate that and influence the people around us for that? And I think that's the trick. And that's the piece, I think, for me, where, being open and honest with people, and it's the building the relationships. At the start of this, I was generally really quite humbled by, I had to have a number of difficult conversations one-on-one with all of our team as we were going through, and Jason and Mel will recall this period, but there wasn't a single person who didn't respond positively to the fact that we'd been truthful and we were sharing the difficulty, and we weren't just saying, it's going to be fine. We were honest. And it's a quote that stuck with me all the way through this, and it's from Maya Angelou, is that people will forget what you do and what you say, but will always remember how you made them feel. And I think that's how we influence our people, by making them feel good, safe, valued.
Yeah, one of the things that we tend to, that happens frequently is we focus on outcomes, right? Ian, we talk about the tree a lot. And when you look at a tree, you think about the leaves, right? And you see the leaves and you see the evidence of, and, it's interesting to understand a little bit what drives our attitudes and behaviors and how we make decisions. And, maybe Mel, you can maybe talk about that a little bit around how we think about those things as opposed to being solely focused on the outcomes.
Yeah, so it does resonate actually with what I was just thinking about, which is authenticity is going to be a big thing here, personally and industrially. And what I mean by that is being prepared to be vulnerable, and to stand in front of a group of people as a business leader and say, I don't actually know the answer at the moment, but I'm going to try and get the best we can for us, but I don't have the answers, would be a great example. But I think to a larger degree, the success that will come from this personally and corporately comes from how willing you are to display your real values, and whatever they are, because they'll come to the surface, and if they're not, then you're not being authentic. So companies that really do live their values, and it's not just a poster on the wall, but they really do live it, I think will emerge and will thrive to a greater extent than companies that are pulling the wool over people's eyes and saying, well, this is how we are as a company, and it's just a poster on the wall, because they'll get found out.
Yeah.
And the same individually as well. I think if you are true to yourself and you are prepared to share that with people and say, this is who I am, and now and again, to Ian's point, I have a bad day and I'm just going to take the day off because I'm not worth the conversation today. I'm just going to go and hide somewhere. And sometimes you just go, I'm on fire today. Come on, let's go for it. Let's plan this stuff because I've really got my head around it. That's all right. And people have got to be able to support that and sympathize with it and say, that's okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? And Jason's maybe what you're alluding to here is, how do we put a smile on our face? Do we just, force it on? Do we say, oh, it's all going to be fine? And I think we all know that kind of doesn't work. It might do for a little bit, but then, in those quiet moments by yourself, your mood comes out. You are authentic. So if we're trying to influence how we react to this situation, and we're trying to influence how those around us, then I think we've got to get a lot deeper than just fixing our attitude to it, because our attitudes are there because of everything that's gone before. If you've been a worrier all your life, someone saying to you, you just need to stop worrying now, that's not going to change anything. So we've got to get deeper. So I think there's time here for reflection about what do we say to ourselves? What's our internal dialogue? And the first thing I think is we've got to be honest with ourselves. I mean, Penny, you were saying, sometimes you do find yourself wandering off on that worry. Well, that's a very loud coach talking in your ear, because that's you talking to you, and we tend to listen to ourselves quite a lot. So if we're going to change the way that we are with our teams and accelerate into this better normal, I think we've got to be both authentic, honest, and brave with ourselves, and dare to change the way we think about stuff and say, well, that's pretty scary, but that's okay, because that gives me the opportunity to be brave. So what are we going to be brave about today? And immediately you're in a different space from what am I going to worry about? So I think...
Sorry, and that brings me back to a point we were making earlier on about how much of our time we're spending thinking about all the permutations of the future and stuff. And I don't spend quite so much time really thinking about all that stuff. It's on my mind, but I don't pay much attention to it. What I pay more attention to is the thing that you're just bringing up here, which is the quality of your thinking.
Yeah.
And how well you're having that internal dialogue, and what's your current state of mind? Is it positive and upbeat and rational, or is it doom laden and spinning out of control?
I think for me, I have like certain things that I do in my head before I address a subject or come to work in the morning. Either you have an intention on what your outlook is going to be, what you want to accomplish. Like your intentions could be, this whole bowl of really positive information that you intend to share or live from in that moment on that day. And then one of the things that I always think about is if something comes at me in a way where it's not necessarily coming from a good place from somebody, or it's not necessarily positive, and I have to respond to it, is to just put the pause button on. So I always do that. Do I know what I want to say here in this moment? And pause. And then, deal with the situation like that, maybe come back to it later, or just make sure that you're actually coming from a place of intention before you respond to something negative, because so many people will come at you in a negative way, or in a way that's not really going to help any situation. So we can escalate that and make that worse by responding in a way that we didn't intend to. So intention is everything in these moments right now, navigating through the new normal, trying to figure out how we deal with our own internal dialogue, our own negative self-talk, or what have you, and really help people come from a place of intention, and just hitting that pause button before we go into reaction mode.
Sorry, Mel, go on.
Sorry, Ian, I was cutting before you, but yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? Because we've all been separated from the world that we knew 7-8 weeks ago, and the human response to that is to go through the grief cycle, go through the standard grief cycle of denial, anger, bargaining, etc. And you may have already successfully navigated that, and you're out of the other side, and you're fine with everything now, and it's all okay. And the person you're talking to could still be trapped in denial or anger, or be really bent out of shape by something. And that's coming across as, negativity, and lots of anger, and lashing out at things, etc. And it's not because they're a bad person; it's just because they haven't got as far across the grief cycle as you have. So, paying attention to that is I think, a really, really important thing.
And I guess the other thing, when people are displaying sort of negativity as well, or are cynical or about stuff, they might actually be scared, and that's just their defense mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
Cognizant of time here, we're so just to kind of, we've had a discussion around workplace and how do we deal with changes and adaptations to how we work and where we work. Talk about this overload of information, and talk a little bit here about mindset, how we think about what we do. Maybe get Andrew in here. So one of the things that Mel has talked about a lot within our team is take care of you, right? So be curious, how do we as individuals in this take care of ourselves? I go out during the day and I see just loads of folks out walking that I never saw before, right? They're out doing all these things. How do we make sure that that's a priority, and that we do those things in order to take care of ourselves?
Yeah, I think I'm going to kind of flip that around into another question almost. As we've been talking about this, I've been thinking about mindset management. And there's a term that I learned recently that I had never heard before called destination addiction. And I don't know if Mel and Ian, as you guys play in the coaching world, if you're familiar with this term, but I think of it also so destination addiction is the idea that happiness, and Jason, you kind of triggered this for me when you were talking about outcomes. So destination addiction is the idea that happiness is elsewhere, right? It's when I, hit the next set of sales numbers, or it's when I, like our revenue hits this mark, or, for on a personal level, it's if I just get the next new car, if I just get the next new house, like that's where happiness lies. And yet it never gets fulfilled, because happiness is always somewhere out of reach. It's at the next destination. So like translating that into a professional setting, as businesses are looking at like, well, gosh, we were on a trajectory to hit, I don't know, 100 million, whatever, arbitrary number. And now we're not going to. Like how you respond to that. What are the benefits to focusing on each day? Did we make forward progress versus how close are we to that destination, right? Like, did we make forward progress? We did. Is that enough? Can that be enough? Like, yeah, we did something positive. We made forward progress. And I think that I want to ask how you feel that plays into the professional realm, right? How important is it to shift away from outcomes and more towards process and progress? And what does that do for the individuals as well? So I guess I'm kind of flipping it into a question for you guys. How do you feel focusing on processes? Like, what's the importance of that?
I think it's really, really important to enjoy the journey, not just the destination. And I think it's okay to reserve celebration for the destination, but I wouldn't put all of your celebration on the destination. So I think the focus here on process, I think, is really important, in that if you keep dreaming about only, and you put all your mental power into that future place at the expense of today, and you lose attention from today, then I think that can be damaging. Whereas, right now we've got great big barriers put across the road in front of us, but we can always do something. And I think that's the thing. What can I do today? There's loads of stuff I can't do, so let's just park that for the minute. But what can I do? And I think that focus on the moment and the now of what can I do in this hour, in this day, in this week, that is going to move me personally, my family, my friends, my community, my business, what's going to help. And I think it's really important. And for two reasons. One, I think it's really healthy for us to focus on that, because you can then feel that sense of purpose for doing something right. But the other thing is when you offer help and you go into the mode of helping others, it does something. There's something to the chemistry here. Is you feel good about the fact that you are helping, and that's infectious. So I think that focus on not what can't I do, forget that, what can I do? And that is the process. I think that's, it's not complicated. It's really easy. What can I do this hour, this half day, this day that moves me personally or someone around me in my community further forward? I think that's the bit I would focus on. And yeah, sure, as we said earlier, I think we've got to focus on the post-COVID period. We've got to spend time, because that's got to be attractive enough for us to want to move towards. We want it to be a better normal, not just a normal, but the process, the focus on every day. What can I do? What's that new normal, new routine that's going to move me inch by inch towards that new destination? And I think that's the bit that's important.
It always troubles me when you come across people who are saying things like, "Oh, I can't wait for it to be Saturday." And why would you wish the week away? You get 4,000 of these on average. That's all it is. That's it. So why wish one away? Celebrate everyone.
Yeah. I mean, and it's interesting.
We got about 5 minutes left here, so to tie some stuff. Obviously, I think, Mel, you brought up a good point about values, right? And that now you kind of bring those to the surface a little bit. So as we close this out here, we talk about communication, about mindset, and I think maybe there's a good point to as we often spend time worried about the uncertainties and what's going to happen, maybe a bit of discussion on a little bit of a focus on now, right? I mean, this is what we can control. This is what we can do. So maybe some closing thoughts from each of you on that piece. How do we focus on the now? I have I'll read it, and this will be my closing thought. It's a quote by a guy named Everett Hale, and I keep it. It's on my iPad, and this quote says, "I am only one, but I am one. I cannot do everything, but I can do something, and I will not let what I cannot do interfere with what I can do." And so I think oftentimes we spend a lot of time worried about here and thinking about there and forget about now. So maybe just some closing thoughts to that, and then we'll go from there.
So I'll go next then, Jason. So for me, exploring this new, better, different, normal, whatever it is, however we call it, this new landscape in front of us, both in terms of professionally and personally, what it means to me, is my obsession at the moment. So just being overly curious about the whole situation, and leaning into it rather than flinching away from it. And it puts me in mind of a wonderful quote, which I take a lot of credit or a lot of comfort from, which is by T.S. Eliot. And T.S. Eliot wrote, "We must not cease from exploration, and the end of our exploring will be to arrive where we began and to know the place for the first time." And I love that. And so I'm continuing to explore cognitively and industrially.
Awesome.
Great.
Andrew?
Well, I don't have any really cool quotes like you guys, but I'm gonna have to brush up on my quote library. I think that ultimately this has forced us, again, talking about that level playing field. I think it's just really put us in a position where we have to focus on the now. We have to focus on process, and I think that bleeds through, kind of personal and professional, to the point where, you can choose to be anxious or fearful, or you can choose to come to a place of acceptance, right? Like, and you can focus on the things that you're not able to do, or you can focus on the things that you are able to do. And one thing that I think, Penny and Marcy as leaders of our team are really great at is, what can we do? And just rapid assessment of, does this make sense? Is it doable? Let's, start to explore it a little bit. If it doesn't make sense, we'll shelf it and we'll go, for the next thing that maybe this makes sense. And that comes through in a lot of ways. But as we identify new markets that maybe we want to break into or can break into, just the diversity of our products, and maybe use cases for them that we haven't fully explored yet. I think we're just spending a lot more time naturally in the now, because we don't know but what we get a news report tonight that says something changed.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Perfect. Penny?
Yeah, I mean, I keep coming back to this thought in my head, like on a daily basis, because I do think a lot about the future. I can't help it. It's just humanness, of who am I going to be when all of this is done, when all of this is, when the dust settles, like when the new normal settles and we really understand fully what that means. But it is a daily thing too. It's not, every day is a new normal, because you're right, Andrew, everything's constantly changing, and what we planned yesterday doesn't now work today. And so now we have to innovate and change around all of these new normals that are going on. For instance, I wanted to invest in Beyond Meat, and somebody told me, don't do it. They're only for restaurant chains and so on. And I wish I wouldn't have listened. I wish I would have listened to my gut, because I'm vegan, I'm a yogi. I was like, I should invest in this. This is something I can get behind. And I didn't do it. I listened to what all the experts says, like, this is just something for the restaurant chains. So I didn't do it. And I see now that everyone is moving toward buying that, because we're in a crisis with the meat. So that's just because we're changing. Every day something is different, right? So I keep coming back to that. Who am I going to be tomorrow? Who is this company going to be tomorrow? So I want that to be, my intention is I want that to be the best that it can be. And if all of the things that we've been talking about help us chip away at all of the reasons to hold on to the past, then that's just means we're headed in the right direction. We are being vulnerable. We all are, embracing the new.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, I like that.
Ian, can you take us home?
Okay, so I'm going to use a motorsport analogy here. What we're facing here, this is not a drag race. This is an endurance race, and endurance races are won or lost in the pits. So my thought here is pit stop. So as we're going through this, for ourselves personally today, are we scheduling pit stops for us? And I mean mental pit stops. It's really easy to just soak up all of that time to do all the great stuff that we've been talking about for the last 45 minutes or so. We've got to remember us. When I was in the police force for a while, we were always taught, look after yourself first, because as soon as you become inoperative, you cease to help everyone else. So pit stop, mental pit stop. Take the time to look after yourself, look after your mindset. If you're going to worry, schedule it. Okay, I'll do more worrying at 5:30 this evening over a glass of red wine. Fine, that's fine. Let's, if that's what you want to do, that's fine. Do stuff, pick up the phone, Zoom people that lift your emotional spirits and top your emotional fuel tank up. Look after yourself. And we've talked about data overload. Best thing that you can possibly do, listen to the briefings from the scientists and turn off the TV. Let's not condition ourselves let's not fuel that worry fire if we think we've got it, because there's nothing we can do about it anyway. So pit stop, personal pit stops. Talk to yourself nicely, be kind to yourself, and then you are the best person you can be for your team.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Well, I think we've had a good discussion. We've covered a lot of ground. Yes, we will end it there for today.
Okay. Thanks, folks. Penny, Andy, been great talking to you again.
You as well.
All right. See you later.
Thanks.